Well, good morning and hello to everyone that will be watching this video cast. This is a continuing conversation that I am having with others, especially my friend in ministry, both at City Church and in seminary, Dr. David Nystrom, past provost at Biola, current professor in residence at Western Seminary, Western Theological Seminary in Sacramento. And as we continue our discussion on race, culture, and the church, I wanted to spend our time together today. Just obviously, David, you come from a position of the academy, if you will, but you've also been pastoring. You have a very robust, very full resume. It's been 7 weeks since the murder of George Floyd. 7 weeks. Seems like it's almost like dog years. It's been a long time. And it's been an emotional, spiritual roller coaster. And this is what I've sensed, is that there has been a great deal of spiritual capital expended, rightly so, at the very beginning. And that as time goes on, as the summer unfolds, as the COVID virus continues to expand without a bound, seems like, that our collective interest is beginning to wane. That's my sense, and it just could be me. And I gauge this by not only the news, the media, but more specifically the social media, because that is where a lot of the energy began and resided with those that are younger than we are, that are into social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm seeing fewer and fewer related posts. And nothing, just like the virus and how our behavior has, our behavior is beginning to change as if the virus has gone away. And then the results are what they are. You have, again, the spread, the contagion is just, it's just going crazy. Our behavior hasn't changed. I think there's a parallel there. I don't even want to try and exploit that opportunity, metaphorical opportunity. But that's it on my intro. I want to hear from you. What are you sensing? What are you sensing? And you're invited to speak in many venues, different ministries. What are you sensing there? What are you sensing with your peer group? And what are you sensing from your students right now at Western, that are, in theory, ought to be neck deep, knee deep in this thing we call social justice vis-a-vis social gospel? So, Dr. Nystrom.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a privilege always to be with you, my friend. And although this is a moment, long moment, that is not unlike others in our history, but I think it bears all the hallmarks of being a time where important decisions need to be made, and choosing not to act is a decision.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think one clear trend is that may be exacerbated by the mechanics that social media employs. The one clear trend is there are new things now starting to appear, on the social media horizon, and part of that is just we are, as a culture, we've been more and more habituated to look for the next shiny thing. And for some evangelical churches, some churches, this has been, I don't know quite the right language, but to kind of get on the social justice bandwagon for the first time. They seem to have jumped on that, and this may not be the most charitable way to think about it, but I wonder if it's just that's the hot pony right now. That's the hot ride right now. Where's the where's the long-term commitment? And I think this may not be the best image but I think it's a pretty good one. Maybe I'm wrong. But this whole matter of how we actually understand each other and relate to one another isn't a problem we fix, like like a leaky faucet or something like that. It's a commitment to walk down the road together.
Yeah.
It's not a project that you check off your to-do list, nor is it something that is always going to be super popular. And so I think I worry about that a little bit, and especially if we're a culture that has a hard time with attention span, with attention span, and I think one thing seems to me, I've seen it, and I could be wrong, but I think I've seen it in casting a bigger shadow, how for most of us we have a hard time understanding anyone else's life outside of our own experience of our own.
Yeah. Wow.
So if we say, oh, people don't do that, well, all you really mean is you haven't had people do that to you. To you. So actually learning to listen and to be connected to people, that have different experiences, and to recognize that those experiences are valid and they're real.
Pastor Fred Campbell, whom
Yeah.
Redwood City, I had the pleasure of conversing with him this past weekend, and I don't know if he said it on the video or not. And this is nothing I'm sharing out of school. I'm sure he'd say it publicly. He said this time with a Zoom and Facebook Live centric lifestyle, he said this time has caused him to live into the lives of others more than he has ever. And he said, honestly, it's spiritually exhausting. He said, his words, I'm loosely paraphrasing. He said, intercessory prayer is hard. To live into the life of others is hard. And that's really what I am not the brightest bulb on anybody's tree, but I cautioned and cautioned and cautioned. It's like, well, this is what you need to get attention, the collective attention. Again, we're talking to the church now, and I'm speaking to the world. This is race, culture, and the church. You need to get the collective attention of everyone, but you need to understand that getting one's attention is just the first, and I'm sorry to say, the first and easiest thing to deal with.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing. Now it's like, okay, now how do we get into the transformational?
Yeah. So you asked about like conversations I've had, and I think I've had several in the past, well, in the last 7 weeks, since the murder of George Floyd. Maybe I would have had more if it weren't that we're in this remote lockdown world, and while I do see my students, it's not as often or informally as it would have been the case. But I have had several conversations which reflected a little bit of a conversation you and I had a couple of days ago, and the book how to be an anti-racist.
Hmm.
There, an awareness among folks that have actually sought me out to have a with whom to have a personal conversation, and but seems like maybe intentionally not with a group yet, but to run past me some of what they've been thinking. And I could maybe summarize it by saying, it's not enough simply not to be racist. You need to be anti-racist.
Hmm.
And another way to put it, I think, is benign indifference actually is hostility.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's actually what Scripture teaches. We are called to work towards, be a part of of God's unfolding plan, and that I think is enormously hard for American evangelicals, or maybe just American Christians in general, to understand. It's maybe they've got a transactional view, God saves me, I'm good. But this idea that that simply standing by without malice in your own heart, that actually is hostility. And I get that from theologically from, among other places, Ephesians 2, where Paul talks about this dividing wall of hostility. And a wall between opposing parties keeps the peace, right? The wall in Northern Ireland.
Correct.
But it's there because there is hostility brewing on either side of the wall.
Correct.
So I think that's a very different image, and it's hard for Americans, many, to get their heads around that one. I think because so much else in our culture is delivered to us. And passive acquiescence is good enough in all kinds of ways. But
I guess I want to frame a question, and bear with me as I do this. Is the behavior you just described, is it because of a human physiology that is exhausting, that creates exhaustion? Or is there, from your perspective, I'm asking you to to be God, kind of, or is it something more insidious that, if we really peel the onion, I really don't want to be bothered. It's not my battle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that last point actually. And in part because I think it's been magnified by the by our culture, which for decades now has said you should be rewarded, you should not have to work that hard, you should have it easy, it should be delivered to you. Now, there was a recent book by a guy named Peter Bregman. I think it was published in I think Dutch originally in 2019, just published in English a couple of months ago, called Humankind: A Hopeful History. And he wants to say, actually, human beings can be kind and generous and self-sacrificing, and that's definitely true. But we can also, the biblical notion isn't just that we're horrible, vain, grasping, selfish people, but that we're wildly inconsistent. And that we have the capacity for kindness, but we also have this selfishness within us. And on the one hand, our culture, certainly since Milton Friedman's Nobel Prize winning economist published that article saying, businesses shouldn't, their only job is to maximize shareholder profit. I mean, that kind of that accelerated this horrible economic self-interest where CEOs now make them, hundreds of times more than
the lowest paid employee,
the lowest paid person. It used to be maybe 4 or 5 times. Now it's hundreds of times, because now it's not. Now the only goal is shareholder profit, not good for society or whatever. So in that context, I think people that don't want to be reflective, and let's face it, people oftentimes don't want to think deeply about their lives and about culture.
So this segues then, I guess, into spiritual formation.
Yeah,
our spiritual formation. One of the things that we've been discussing for seems like a couple of years now is a new, folks would call it a cohort master's degree program in seminary. I'd like to think of it as the opportunity for spiritual formation in an affordable and convenient way. And we've been discussing it, and you've been discussing it with your administration with Western. And it seems like that maybe we're coming closer and closer to
close
something happening. It's just careful, something really may happen. A spiritual, I'll just call it that, a spiritual formation cohort with an urban ministry bent.
Yes.
What is that? What is your hope? Because you will be leading that cohort. So this is the heart and soul of something that has been on your mind and your heart for a long time, which you've shared with me, which I'm attempting to promulgate. What do you hope? What is it tangibly you hope to see accomplished through this endeavor?
So the ends, tangibly, one of the ends would be, have a group of folks, 15, 20, no more than that probably, who would be excited about being a part of that, about this program. Okay, now what is that? So that's one tangible end. And what is that program? I think maybe the best way to explain it is to point out that none of the writers in the New Testament, not the writer of Hebrews, not Paul, not John, not Peter, none of them were thinking, I want to write stuff to go in a library someday that people will study and write and write papers about.
That's good. That's good, Dr. Nystrom. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
None of them.
That's a good reminder.
They had ministry in mind, and for them, the life and death and resurrection of this person, Jesus, was the single most important event since the creation, and that it was God. It was God intervening for us foolish, lost, selfish children of His. Yeah. And it's about, and the big arc is reconciliation. I mean, that's even why, in Ephesians 3, Paul spends, a huge chunk of his theological capital in Ephesians 3 talking about how even the recalcitrant principalities and powers are going to be reconciled. So that's that huge arc all the way to the end of Revelation, where finally there's peace, meaning not just absence of tension, but good bursting forth. So that means it's not just academic. It's about this intermingled patterns of thought, understanding the theology and the action in the New Testament. Patterns of heart, that's the spiritual formation part, and then how we operate. So it's integrated that way, not just in the classroom, but also having ministry credit to be earned, while you're working, but in getting in ministry, but having what you're doing fit some of the coursework. Actually, having some of the coursework fit what you're actually doing. That's a better way to put it.
Right.
And all that with a strong drive to say, what was Jesus trying to accomplish? And how can we be faithful to that in our own culture? And that's going to be different than simply growing or some kind of marketing strategy. I'm hoping that people can see that simply using messaging language is not, that's not telling people the truth. That's just hoping to bend people to your will.
I was going to use the word trick, but I like your word better.
Yeah, I mean, simply repeating over and over, or to get people to not pay attention to what really is important. I mean, whether or not, however the virus got started, the big issue is hundreds of thousands of people are sick right now, not blaming somebody. So, I mean, it's focused on not trying to strain out the way the world works from how we think about ministry, and instead focus on what is the heart of Scripture. What is the heart of God? What does God want us to focus on in terms of our ministry? How do we define success? Because I have a feeling that all kinds of things that look successful in the spiritual realm to us humans might not be all that big a deal, in God's economy.
One of the things that Dr. Campbell, again, months, if not years ago, he had written a book. It's I'm going to butcher the title, but basically it was The Win, WIN. And to your point, he said, he posited the question, when do we win as Christians?
Yeah. That's a great.
When do we win?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of times, again, we're always looking at our behavior seems to be wrapped around that an eschatological view of winning. Well, the ultimate win, it's the evil one is cast into the lake that burns forever and ever. That's when we win. Okay, so up until that point, we're losing. It boggles my mind that we have this perverted's a hard word, but we have a view that almost is dismissive of. That's why the apostle said, it's like, how dare you have the temerity to say that you have the love of God in you, and you see your brother or sister in need, have the capacity to do something about that, and you do nothing about it.
Yeah. I mean, discipleship, as you well know, deny money its power, give money away, discipleship is so antithetical to American notions of success, and yet American notions of success have flooded church strategy.
Yes.
And so how then do we live into that? So it's having the courage to first of all, being able to even understand it, to see it and take it seriously, and having the courage to live into it. So the central features of discipleship in Jesus, in Jesus' teaching, the parable of the prodigal son. One of the lessons there is the prodigal doesn't bring anything with him from the far country when he comes home to the father. And it's so interesting, because what would he have brought? Hog feed.
Correct.
And so,
Right.
wow, the things that we value are hog
Right.
are hog feed next to what God would desire to form in us. And that just shows you how powerfully influenced we are by the atmosphere around us. This um, this late Enlightenment formed culture that is the American experience of. It's an atmosphere, right? And not everything in the atmosphere is bad, but there's a lot of toxic stuff in our
Correct.
atmosphere.
Correct. You're expressing, it's both an affirmation and an ongoing lament, because the expression, given the formation that is necessary in order to achieve real change, identifiable, substantive, um, lasting change. It's marathon doesn't begin to even with a marathon ends. So I can't
Yeah,
even say it's a marathon versus a sprint. It's like, no, this is kind of like a lifestyle change. There's
yeah,
it's every as the drug addict or the alcoholic who is struggling with the malady. um, what's the verbiage that's typically every day is a choice.
yeah,
Every day is a choice. Every day
yeah,
when it comes
yeah,
to, as you said, quoting the book, being an anti-racist, it's choice. The courses I take, it's a choice. How I spend my money, it's a choice. How I interact with my neighbor, it's a choice. Every day, everything is a choice. Us sitting down on this Zoom and being fashionistas in black t-shirts, we didn't know this. It's a choice. It's a
yeah.
choice. It's a choice. And so um, um, it's a life, not even a lifestyle. It's a life lived. Um, it's a choice. It's a choice. Um, where I'm always pushing the envelope in time with you, Doctor. I will, for those that will be watching this, and I invite folks to share this widely. If you would be so kind as to send your questions to me at info at citychurchsac, that's SAC.org. So that's info at citychurchsac.org. If you would send that to me, I will be sure to get any questions you have to Dr. Nystrom when it comes to the cohort program. It's beginning. The plan is that it will start up in January. Is that the current
Yeah,
incarnation?
it could be January, but it might be summer. But I mean, the plan is in the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay,
So
so either January of 2021 or the summer of 2021.
yeah,
Um,
we would need, I think, maybe 15 people at minimum to sign up, and clearly the COVID scenario, as it's done for almost every aspect of life, is sort of disrupted our timeline. But we're going to do it.
or exposed again is again, I seem like I'm referencing Pastor Campbell, as he shared. It's like it's presenting, it's both exposing things, but it's also presenting opportunity,
That's true.
and to engage in ways we had not considered, or if we considered it, they were more adjunct to the overall plan.
Yeah,
The ancillary to, it's like, no, let's again, it goes right back. And again, I don't unpack everything that you wonderfully said. It goes right back. If we look at what the gospel writers, their work, their letters, they they weren't writing for academia. They were writing letters to churches
yeah,
that were in the mix, struggling with faith, getting things wrong, encouraging those that were getting it right. It was real communication for real life, and that is just wonderful. It's beautiful, just beautiful the way you so clearly presented that. That's why you're Dr. David Nystrom and I'm not. But
Well, I'm lucky to know you, my friend.
oh, bless you. Last words. Last words. What do you give us? Give us some encouragement. Give us a kick in the pants if necessary. Your last words.
Yeah, well, I think something you said, referencing Pastor Campbell. You know, the last couple of weeks, the last 2 months, have been a marvelous opportunity to actually take a realistic look at ourselves as a culture, as Christians in the culture, and people that are realist and serious don't then forget, but they change their patterns of life and thought with this new realization. I mean, the call of God on us is pretty clear. And so it's the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. But the Lord is with us, and we can go confidently into the future. But yeah, discipleship is following someone else, not following ourselves.
Mic drop. Here we go again. Dr. David Nystrom. Again, for those that will watch this, INFO at citychurchsac.org. Dr. Nystrom, thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother.
I appreciate you so much.
Well, right back at you.
Bye.